Today we'll talk about the meaning of language in use. These meanings may be in addition to or beyond the literal or dictionary meanings of language or various words or expressions used in a language. And the field of study which deals with these meanings is called pragmatics. Let's try to define what pragmatics is. Pragmatics is an area of linguistics which deals with speakers' meanings. By speaker's meanings, we mean the meaning intended by the speaker during a conversation. It may be written or spoken conversation. These are also called invisible meaning. And again, by invisible, we mean these meaning may not be on the surface level. I mean, what is said may not accurately convey what is intended, or the intended meaning may be entirely different from what has been said. So we call them invisible meanings. And in order to infer such meanings, we need to have the knowledge of the background. And this background could be of the context or the knowledge which is implied or included during a conversation. So the background knowledge context is very important to infer meanings, especially pragmatic meanings. People do have shared understanding while they converse with each other, and they do believe in each other that they are sharing proper information with each other. And this kind of understanding makes a communication successful. And in pragmatics, we call it cooperative principle. We may also infer that pragmatics would vary from culture to culture, because the meanings which pragmatics deals with rely heavily on the context, and in various cultures the contexts are different. Therefore, there is a strong likelihood that pragmatic meanings would differ from culture to culture, as the norms of various cultures vary from each other. And in pragmatics, we also need to deal with the relationship between linguistic forms of what is said and the communicative function which is intended to be performed by the speaker. This relationship at the center of pragmatics, because it helps us understand the hidden meanings. I give you an example which is in front of you. Just read this sentence. The bus was late. This sentence could be interpreted differently in different situations. For example, this could serve as an explanation in a situation when a person is late from his office and he is telling his colleague or boss that he is late because the bus was late, and the bus he usually travel in to reach his office. And this could also be a complaint to the driver who is driving the bus that your bus is late. Similarly, look at the sentence, my car broke yesterday. This could be an excuse of not reaching somewhere. You might present it an excuse or explanation, and this could simply be a piece of information shared with a friend or a colleague or a family member that my car actually broke down. Overall, we could see that pragmatic meanings rely on two important relationships. These relationships include the relationship between speech and performance. Speech, what is said, and what has been performed. This also leads us to talk about the performative theory of language, which believes that speaking something is actually performing something. When we say something, we are actually performing a few actions. For example, if I say, please forgive me, I am actually requesting somebody to forgive me. So I am performing the action of request. So in our everyday talk, we perform various actions when we say various things. It also relies or depends on the relationship between language and context, as I have tried to explain a while ago, that these meanings rely heavily on how language is used in a particular way in a certain context. So context would be at the core of the meanings which are derived pragmatically. Pragmatics looks at the ways how a certain speech act is performed. For example, people perform various speech acts: forgiving, requesting, apologizing, etc., or ordering. It also looks into the way how a certain particular speech act is performed by a certain speaker. For example, there could be individual variations in relation to the performance of a certain speech act. Different people might ask for forgiveness in different ways, or might request the same thing in different ways. And these may vary from culture to culture at a larger level. So pragmatics looks into all these variations because they all add to the meanings. Context is very important in pragmatics because it help us identifying various meanings. What includes context? This is important to be understood at the beginning. A context might include the physical context in which the conversation is happening. For example, the overall setting or environment, the socio-cultural norms in which that conversation is happening, or the settings. It may also include the physical or background knowledge context, in the certain knowledge context in which that conversation falls into. And more importantly, it also involves linguistic context, which means context, because a word or phrase is said in between or in relation to other words or phrases, and those phrases help us understand or delimit the meanings of that particular phrase, and we call them contextual meanings. Contextual meanings are very important in pragmatics because they convey those extra meanings which are intended by the speaker. And they also help us in limiting the overall possible interpretations of a phrase, because on most of occasions when we are confused about the meaning of something, we try to read what has been written before or after that word or phrase, and that help us identify that particular intention of the speaker.